Number 10. Abandoned toxic base. In Greenland, there is an abandoned World War II facility that not only serves as a grim reminder of the war, but is also leaking toxic waste. Located on the remote island of Ikatek, it was first established back in 1941 as part of an agreement between the United States and Denmark. They called the base Bluie East Two, and the original agreement made the U.S. exempt from responsibility in the cleanup. After the war, the Americans simply abandoned the place in 1947 and never looked back. All these years later, the base is a ruin filled with countless barrels of leaded aviation fluid dotting the landscape. There are buildings filled with asbestos, broken down trucks everywhere, hundreds of cases of unused dynamite, and a lot of this stuff is actually leaking toxic waste. According to National Geographic, even more disturbing is that Bluie East Two is only one of over 30 bases that the United States military built in Greenland throughout both World War II and the Cold War. All of them are in similar situations, abandoned and left to simply spill their toxic waste all over the ground. And for the people of Greenland, it's not great. They didn't even have a say in the matter, since Denmark technically owned the island until they gave the people autonomy in 1979. Since most people in Greenland hunt or fish, knowing that there are 30 bases leaking pollutants into the ocean and into the land is a bitter reminder of the past. More recently, a petition to clean up the mess reached the Danish parliament, who promised to pay around $25 million to clean up some of the old U.S. military bases. Greenland has also requested help from the U.S. to clean up Camp Century, a former secret base in the ice that also contains toxic waste that could be released at any moment. Only time will tell if the cleanup efforts are enough to finish the job. Number 9. A lost attack plane. A Soviet ground attack plane was recently discovered in Poland. It's a Petlyakov PE-2, a terrifically rare find. Local villagers came across the wreckage of the plane completely by accident, with the original 2 crew members sadly still sitting inside the cockpit and even wearing their uniforms. They had all their personal items still on them, though the crew members themselves weren't much more than bones by the time they were rescued. The 2 men have since been removed from the wreckage and sent to Russia to be buried. The Polish villagers got stuck with the duty of dragging the wreckage out of the mucky swamp where it was found. They even disassembled some of the larger, more intact pieces and sent them to a nearby museum to be put on display. As for how the plane crashed here, it was part of a defensive line during what is called the Wehrmacht retreat in January of 1945. The pilots were participating in an offensive by the Soviets as they stormed across the Polish landscape and chased the Germans completely out of Poland. It was the final push before the ultimate capture of Berlin. This airplane was one of the victims of the chase. It apparently crashed and was completely forgotten about for 75 years. And to be honest, it's not the only piece of wreckage still hidden in this part of Poland from World War II. Number 8. Roman Tower Fortress. A team of archaeologists working in the United Kingdom recently stumbled upon an ancient Roman fortress that had been converted by the Nazis into a war bunker back in World War II. It happened when Germany was occupying the Channel Islands between France and England. The fortress is known locally as the Alderney Nunnery. Archaeologists have found remains here that go all the way back to the medieval period, though the fortress was also used in the Tudor era and even by Napoleon. This place was popular. In total, it has been occupied for at least 2,000 years, and interestingly enough, it was also the site of the only 2 concentration camps to ever be constructed in British territory. Dr. Jason Monaghan, one of the archaeologists involved with the dig, told local news that the fortress is an extremely complex site. The original walls were damaged in the Middle Ages, a new part of the structure was built in the 18th century, but in 1793, the British Army demolished the interior of the fortress. In 1906, it was converted into a space to be used by military families. But it was the Nazis who used it last, fortifying the structure with their very own bunkers and adding concrete to the ancient walls to make them resistant to artillery. They eventually abandoned the fort at the beginning of the war, relinquishing the only British property they had managed to conquer throughout all of the fighting. Number 7. The Nazi Eagle. A giant eagle over 800 pounds and gripping a swastika in its talons was recently discovered by Uruguay. However, just weeks after finding the incredible World War II artifact, They were ordered to sell the giant bronze Nazi eagle and get it out of the country. The eagle was originally mounted to the stern of a German battleship called the Admiral Graf Spee. The ship sank off the coast of South America at the very beginning of World War II. It was discovered again back in 2006 by private divers hired by the government of Uruguay. They didn't manage to get the entire battleship out of the water, but the eagle was quite a dramatic find. It was displayed briefly in Montevideo, but they were forced to put it in storage when Germany started protesting against the exhibition of Nazi paraphernalia. The Third Reich symbol has been the object of controversy for years, and the German government does not allow for things of this nature to be displayed to the public or sold unless it is placed in proper historical context, such as in a museum. So, to prevent an international conflict, the court of Uruguay ruled that the eagle must be sold off within 90 days, and the proceeds given to the salvage company who discovered the wreck. The Admiral Graf Spee managed to sink several merchant ships belonging to the Allies in the South Atlantic before a pair of British cruisers tracked it down, intercepted the vessel, and destroyed it on December 13, 1939. The captain was brought to the harbor in Montevideo, where he was forced to order the ship scuttled. The ship was sunk, then not seen again until just recently. The captain of the ship actually ended up dying a few days after his capture in a hotel in Buenos Aires. Number 6. A Lost Mortar. In a small British village, Army technical officers were called in to carry out a controlled explosion. Citizens in the sleepy village of Codown and Ross River couldn't believe it when their tranquil existence was disrupted for a handful of hours. And all because one of their neighbors discovered a leftover mortar from World War II. The rusty device, still active and highly dangerous, stuffed with 2 pounds of high explosives, was found by a farmer named John Ross McMathuna. He had been using his metal detector in an old field when he came across the explosive, which was probably left over by the American Army stationed here during the war. Before D-Day, American soldiers had set up a training range here and had placed all kinds of bombs. It's no surprise that they left one behind. Luckily, the farmer knew exactly what to do. He made a few calls, the technical officers arrived, and before 10 o'clock in the morning, the bomb had been destroyed. Citizens woke up to quite the bang, and the grim reminder that their countryside is still riddled with unexploded ordnance that could go off at any minute. Metal detectorists, beware. Number 5. Mystery of Flight 19. 75 years after the disappearance of Flight 19, the terrible tragedy still remains a mystery. It's actually no closer to being solved today than it was back in 1945. The incident took place on December 5th, less than 4 months after World War II ended. 5 Navy Avenger torpedo bombers left the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, scheduled to perform military exercises between Florida and Puerto Rico, in an area you might know as the Bermuda Triangle. Just after the exercises started, the weather turned bad. Radio contact was lost and the planes just kind of fell off the radar. The Navy scrambled together a search and rescue team, but the aircrafts were never found. All 14 airmen involved in the exercises were lost, and to make matters even more terrifying, so were all 13 of the crew members who went out looking for them as part of the rescue effort. In total, 27 souls were lost and never found. Even today, nobody has any clue where they went or what happened to them. There are a lot of theories surrounding the disappearance of Flight 19. Some say it was aliens, while some say it was some other paranormal phenomenon. The disappearance was actually one of the first things that gave the Bermuda Triangle its reputation as a black hole that swallows aircrafts and sea vessels alike. What do you think happened to Flight 19? Let me know your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. Number 4. Amphibious Tank. A giant amphibious tank was recently pulled out of the dirt after being found buried 30 feet deep in an English field. Excavators in England couldn't believe their luck when they uncovered the tank 74 years after it originally went missing. The story of the tank goes back to 1947, when over a dozen Buffalo LVT machines were taken to Lincolnshire, where they were to help the British Army with building their flood defenses. However, the flooding proved a bit too much for the amphibious tanks, and 5 of them were swept away. This particular one was never found. The discovery of the amphibious tank wasn't a total accident. It was a group of local military enthusiasts who set out to find it. It took them 5 days of digging, but they did finally strike gold. The craft itself is about 26 feet long, designed to transport supplies and troops across large bodies of water throughout Europe and in the Pacific region. This type of vehicle saw loads of action in all the greatest battles of World War II, including during the fighting on D-Day and at the Battle of Iwo Jima. Before this Buffalo LVT was swept away by the floods, it was used to transport soldiers across Germany's Rhine River in March of 1945. Number 3. A soldier's body. The body of a German soldier was recently found buried in the Netherlands by someone looking for treasure using a metal detector. This guy had not expected to find a corpse when he went wandering out that morning. After his metal detector started beeping, he was thrilled to find a few pieces of ammunition, then even more excited when he uncovered dog tags. But they were still attached to the remains of a fallen soldier. He was a little less excited when he realized that he was standing on an unmarked grave. An investigation ended up being carried out by officials in the Netherlands. They determined that the body was that of a German man who had died during Operation Market Garden in 1944. The operation was carried out by the Allies, with the imperative of freeing the Netherlands from the occupying Germans. Thousands of paratroopers jumped out of the sky, captured key bridges, and liberated the most important areas. It was a total success, and a lot of Germans were killed in the fighting. This particular fellow must have been gunned down by the Allies while in his foxhole. Then somebody simply filled the foxhole in with dirt, burying the soldier and all his military equipment for the next 75 years. Number 2. Nazi artifacts. A trove of Nazi artifacts has been discovered stashed inside the wall of a house in Germany. This shocking discovery was made by a history teacher while cleaning out his aunt's house in the city of Hagen. The house had been ravaged by a series of brutal floods, which had incidentally cracked open the wall where the artifacts were hiding. According to what Sebastian Yurtseven told local news, he got goosebumps when he saw the artifacts hidden there in the wall. They were stuffed into a small space, and he could tell right away that they were old. Thanks to a newspaper dated 1945, he knew exactly how old. Other than the newspaper, Sebastian found a portrait of Adolf Hitler, an old revolver, a pair of gas masks, brass knuckles, badges from the Nazi Party, as well as some letters and documents. The stash was filled with objects that once belonged to a Nazi. When Sebastian decided to do a bit of research, he learned that the building was once the headquarters for the National Socialist People's Welfare Organization, also known as the NSV. But when his aunt purchased the property in the 1960s, she had no idea about its grim past. Members of the organization probably hid their most important documents and their favorite pieces of Nazi memorabilia in the wall back in April of 1945, when Allied troops stormed the city. Number 1. Bomb at a picnic. David and Karen Hibbert were mortified when they found an unexploded bomb at their family picnic. They were at Thoresby Park in Nottinghamshire with their 2 children, Bethany and Jessica, when David came across something interesting next to the river. At first, he thought it was a rusty old artifact, so he picked it up and brought it back to his wife, showing off his cool find. However, his wife actually dismissed him, saying it was nothing but a piece of garbage. David was a little disheartened. He tossed the piece of junk on the ground and kicked at it, and then he told his wife it sounded like metal. While David and Karen were both embarrassed when they did some quick internet research and figured out it really was a bomb. In fact, park authorities had already warned the public not to touch any mysterious objects that they came across. It's because the area was used as an army base during World War II. Even though most of the bombs had been cleared already, some were still suspected to be buried beneath the dirt. Clearly, David had stumbled onto one. Quite frankly, he was lucky he didn't blow up his entire family by kicking at the unexploded bomb. If the thing had gone off, it would have blown him, his wife, and their 2 children to smithereens. Once the couple realized that they were dealing with a real bomb, they moved quickly away from the object, called the authorities, and had them come deal with it. Thanks for watching! What would you do if you found a bomb on a picnic? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!